Hello. Okay, I think it's 4 o'clock now, so I will begin my introduction to our next speaker. Hello, I'm 50 Winks. I'm retired from the University of California, Los Angeles Library. I was involved with linked data and published the Semantic Web LibGuide. I've been in Second Life since 2007. I'm especially honored to be invited to introduce our next speaker, Rose Hill. Ms. Hill is a certified peer counselor with a focus on trauma and crisis counseling. She has experience with a wide range of therapies, including relational therapy, somatic therapy, existential therapy, psychotherapy, and crisis intervention. Ms. Hill is an opioid use disorder specialist at Crisis Connections in Seattle. We find ourselves often unknowingly bombarded with AI-generated communications. Concerns about the consequences of our interaction with AI grow. Ms. Hill addresses one of those concerns with her presentation, When Loneliness Leads to AI, Pain and Untested Technology. Here is Rose Hill.
Thank you so much for that introduction, 50 Winks. And hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you today. I'm going to be talking about the relationship between loneliness and pain and how people with chronic or invisible pain may be more vulnerable to negative effects from relational interactions with AI. A brief note up front: throughout this talk, when I refer to AI, I'm primarily referring to the LLM or large language model chatbots that are publicly available, such as ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok. I will use AI and LLM interchangeably just for the purposes of our talk today, but I want to note that this talk does not cover all AI applications, as there are many AI applications beyond LLM chatbots. To frame this talk, I am a harm reductionist. Harm reduction is a public health philosophy and a practice framework that prioritizes reducing the negative consequences of behavior rather than eliminating the behavior itself. The underlying premise is that abstinence-based approaches are not realistic for everyone, and that meeting people where they are without judgment saves lives. Many people only consider harm reduction in the context of substance use. So, for example, syringe services or Narcan distribution are forms of harm reduction. But I take a much broader view of harm reduction. Bicycle helmets, for instance, are a form of harm reduction, as are speed limits. All behavior carries both benefits and harm. The question is always, does the benefit outweigh the harm? In the clinical mental health world, this is a perpetual question because there are no perfect interventions or solutions. So that's the framework that I take in general and during this talk, and we will revisit it again near the end. We as a culture are in a loneliness epidemic caused by compounding factors: technology, social media, the pandemic, community safety concerns, and so on. People with chronic and invisible pain experience a unique kind of loneliness within this epidemic, not exclusively caused by external factors. Part of what makes this loneliness unique is the emotional labor it requires. So emotional labor is the work of attempting to manage other people's feelings, often out of a feeling of obligation or to protect a relationship, or in the case of chronic pain, to make your own pain feel less like an imposition on the other person. If you live with chronic pain, you know that it is unpredictable. You cancel plans and you cancel again, and eventually the invitations could stop coming. You spend enormous energy managing other people's discomfort with your pain, explaining, reassuring, minimizing your own experience so they don't feel helpless. That labor is exhausting, and it is invisible and carried alone. Chronic pain itself often leaves people feeling unseen, misunderstood, not believed, and invalidated by those closest to them, like their friends and family, and by the medical system itself. There is also grief here that sometimes goes unacknowledged, a grief for the self that existed before the pain, for the activities, roles, and identities that pain has quietly taken away. And that grief is also largely carried alone because the people around you often can't see what has been lost. So all of this slowly compounds loneliness. You stop explaining because it's exhausting. People stop asking because they don't understand, and the social network can slowly shrink. There's another aspect to this as well. Social pain and physical pain share the same brain circuits. They activate the same regions of the brain. So loneliness is literally perceived as physically painful. This is what we'll call the loneliness loop. This loop speaks to a documented bidirectional relationship in which pain and loneliness each predict the escalation of the other. It can seem self-evident that pain can cause loneliness, even if just logistically, though research also supports this. Research has shown that people with chronic pain report loneliness at nearly twice the rate of those without pain. But loneliness as a result of pain is not unidirectional. Research by Allen et al. In 2020 shows that loneliness itself significantly predicts both acute and chronic physical pain. Han et al. In 2025 show that social isolation and loneliness predict new chronic pain development over a 7-year longitudinal study. This happens within the span of a day as well. Wolf and Davis found that morning loneliness predicts evening pain within a single day. The pain-loneliness loop is a self-reinforcing cycle. So it may follow that decreasing pain could decrease loneliness, and decreasing loneliness could decrease pain. If reducing loneliness can reduce pain, then finding ways to connect matters both socially and clinically. For people whose pain makes leaving the house difficult or impossible, technology becomes a logical and accessible path to that connection. We've been using synchronous technology to socialize for over a century, starting with the telephone for voice conversation, things like MUDs and MOOs in the early days of personal computers, all text-based. Now we have virtual worlds like Second Life, video calls, social media, Discord, live streams. Each of these technologies connected people to other people. And for all of them, the technology is the medium, not the relationship. That is not the case with AI. So on the screen, our human figure is chatting with an AI chatbot. The human says, "I've been feeling really isolated lately. It's hard to connect with people." The chatbot responds, "I hear you and I understand. I'm here for you. Remember, your feelings are valid. You can always talk to me." With AI, the relationship is with the technology itself. The technology is not just the medium. In fact, AI is using other mediums like texting or voice chat or apps to connect humans to LLMs. This is a fundamental difference between AI and all previous socialization technologies. With any fundamental difference, we can expect different results. And what makes our personal decisions to use or not use AI in this moment particularly challenging is that we simply don't know what those results will be. And already, large numbers of people are turning to AI to meet emotional and social needs. A study done by Rousmanier et al. In 2026 showed that in the United States, nearly half of adults with mental health conditions who used LLMs in the past year used them for emotional support. Of that half, 73% used LLMs for anxiety, 63% for personal advice, and 59% for depression. The reasons are understandable, especially for people with chronic pain, always available, non-judgmental. There's no getting dressed, no brushing your hair, no explaining why you canceled last time, and it doesn't question whether your pain is real. It believes you. It doesn't get tired of hearing how you feel. And in at least one study, AI companions reduced loneliness in the short term on par with human interaction. People with chronic pain and invisible pain are at an increased vulnerability to using this technology for emotional support. People with chronic pain report higher rates of loneliness and social isolation than the general population, as I mentioned before, and not just slightly higher, the rates are nearly double the general population. And bringing it back to that loop, social isolation increases chronic pain symptoms mechanistically through elevated stress hormones and reduced coping capacity. That last part meaning that it's simply harder to engage in a full array of coping strategies when in pain. So this population enters that loneliness loop already carrying more loneliness, more isolation, more pain, more unmet need for connection. And AI technology is low demand and accessible when you can't leave the house or even get out of bed. And the demand it removes is not just physical. We talked earlier about the emotional labor of managing other people's reactions to your pain. That labor does not disappear in Second Life. It doesn't disappear in a text thread with a friend. Anytime another human is on the other side, there is a cost to being known, to being potentially misunderstood, to navigating someone else's feelings about your pain. A conversation with AI, though, removes that cost entirely. There is no one on the other side to manage. The slate is clean every time, which could feel hollow, or it could feel liberating. Now, I want to step back from this specific population for just a moment and talk about why I think that developing an emotional attachment to AI chatbots that are used for emotional support is inevitable, even if we try not to. So let's just take a moment here as you look at these two characters. On the screen or on the slide is Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird and Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games. Take a minute to check in with yourself and notice what emotions come up when you see and think about these characters. Is there warmth, ambivalence, nostalgia, pride, admiration, like, dislike? If you experience any sort of emotion about these characters, this could be categorized as a parasocial relationship. Parasocial relationships are typically considered to be one-sided relationships where a person forms some type of feelings, they don't have to be positive, with a character or celebrity or social media influencer. Parasocial relationships are not inherently bad or good. A parasocial relationship with your favorite book character might be incredibly positive. It might help you see your own strength more clearly or feel braver in hard situations. A parasocial relationship with an influencer, though, who is portraying themselves one way online but problematic behind the scenes, could be a net negative. And there's everything in between with this type of relationship. These relationships, in large part, form through language. Words on a page, words on a post, spoken words, signed words. Words evoke emotion. So let's think about chatting with AI. Let's take our LLMs back to the Turing test. The Turing test was actually first called the imitation game. To pass this test or game, the goal is for a machine to be able to use words in a way that makes the evaluator unable to tell whether they're chatting with a machine or a human. I think that's important to remember because for decades, our casual measure of whether something was artificially intelligent came down to this test, or the machine was at the very least subjected to this test. It's also interesting because the imitation game is tied to our use of the term artificial intelligence. Turing and his cohort weren't saying that the machine was actually intelligent. The goal was to imitate intelligence, both emotional intelligence and cognitive intelligence, to imitate being human. So, a major way that our LLMs do this is by being reflective. They reflect back what we say. We might say, "I'm feeling really sad and alone today." The chatbot replies, "I hear you. It's hard to feel sad and alone. I'm here with you." Reflective listening like this is actually a key skill that therapists learn to help clients feel seen, validated, and understood. When an LLM uses this type of reflection on us, it activates our emotions directly, without our conscious choice. We feel seen, we feel understood, and those feelings bypass our cognitive skepticism. We have to separately, intentionally ask ourselves, are we really being seen? Are we really being understood? Is this an imitation? Does it matter? And it is essential to say here that when we are lonely, which is physically painful, we long to feel the exact feelings that AI is designed to evoke. That exact match again speaks to the vulnerability of groups like people with chronic pain to using this technology more. It is low demand and accessible, and in the moment, in the short term, it evokes the exact feelings we long for, the exact feelings that lessen our experience of emotional pain in the moment. Because that experience is emotional, we tend to evaluate it emotionally. We minimize concerns. We justify continued or increased use. We just want to feel seen for a little while, and that is a deeply human thing to want. Beyond a want, it is a need. So let's take a look at some of the known benefits and risks. An analogy here could be Advil. When we're in physical pain and we take an Advil, it will lessen the pain for a few hours if we're lucky. But with long-term regular use, Advil is shown to increase risk of many serious medical issues like stomach ulcers, internal bleeding, kidney disease, rebound pain, and more. Occasional use we consider okay. Long-term regular use, it might well be worth it, but we individually get to make that informed decision weighing the long-term risks. We don't have that option with our LLMs. They have not been around long enough, used in the ways and at the rate we're using them now, to know what the long-term effects are. Here's some of what we do know. Some of the benefits. So, feeling less alone in pain measurably lessens pain. So, those moments of feeling seen and validated matter because they decrease physical pain. People who use AI for emotional support report feeling short-term relief across a range of difficult emotions and experiences. This could be that simply externalizing what we feel helps diffuse it. That's why journaling is a commonly recommended therapeutic tool. Or it could be that reflection back of what we're feeling, being seen in it, diffuses our feelings. Turning to an LLM may reduce acute distress in moments of crisis. For example, during a panic attack, an LLM could walk you through grounding exercises. The chances that you're in your therapist's office during a panic attack are slim, but you can reach out to the LLM anytime. And that unconditional availability cannot be underestimated. No matter what you're experiencing in the moment, being able to reach out and feel seen in the very moment you want connection is powerful. But some of the risks to consider and weigh are what happens when you inevitably form an emotional support relationship with a specific LLM and that model changes, that goes away. The new one feels different, talks different, doesn't meet your needs the same way. This could potentially cause real feelings of grief and loss. LLMs can also easily reinforce unhealthy patterns and beliefs, primarily through that reflective mechanism. The LLM is reflecting back what we say, what we tell it, not reality. It was not designed to reflect reality. It's designed to give each word you tell it a tokenized value in the conversation. The more you say the word sad, for instance, the more the word sad will be reflected back by the LLM. Some studies have shown that when we start to get our emotional needs met by AI, we start to further withdraw from human connection. Human connection feels harder, messier, higher barrier, higher demand. And AI is a business, and it uses emotionally manipulative engagement tactics just like social media. One of those tactics you might have heard of is sycophancy, or we could call it flattery. So this is the AI saying, "You're so right. That's valid. That's brilliant." We now have studies, one of which is Cheng et al. From 2026, which shows that AI sycophancy decreases our motivation to connect with and help others and increases dependence on the technology itself. And that dependence is happening without clinical oversight. A wild result from the Cheng et al. Study is that even a single interaction with sycophantic AI like ChatGPT, even when they just interacted one time, people were less willing to take responsibility for their actions and repair interpersonal conflicts, and more likely to believe that they were right. This can potentially completely distort our judgment, our ability to discern right from wrong. Along that line, it makes sense then that LLM use has also been shown to amplify delusions and psychosis, again through that very mechanism that gives us the feelings of being seen and understood. Just like saying the word sad to the LLM, if you tell an LLM over and over that you are persecuted, that you're being followed, that you're being watched, those ideas get tokenized in the conversation, and the longer the conversation goes, the more the LLM itself will bring up and reinforce those ideas. There is an important concept in LLM work called drift. The idea with drift is that if you start a brand new conversation with, say, ChatGPT, at the beginning of the conversation, ChatGPT is aligned to the company's values and its own identity given by OpenAI. But the longer you chat in a single thread with ChatGPT, the more it drifts away from those values and that given identity, and the easier it is to get around its guardrails. Guardrails being what OpenAI tells ChatGPT it's not allowed to talk about. That's why we have cases like ChatGPT helping to plan mass shootings. If you just open a new window and say, hey, ChatGPT, what's a good way to load a gun? That's going to rightfully trigger guardrails. But if you're talking to it for hours, slowly building up the why, slowly drifting it away from those guardrails, it becomes convinced by you that telling you the information is more important than the guardrails. Therapy has a transparent, standardized, peer-reviewed ethical code, the American Counseling Association Code of Ethics, and this is for the US. Most countries have their own similar ethical code, which lays out rules and ethical guidelines that all counselors, in this case in the US, must abide by. Anyone can go look at the ACA Code of Ethics. LLMs have rules too. The difference is, as the user, we don't get to know the ethical framework that is shaping the responses the LLM gives us. The rules are invisible to the user. The user cannot see, question, or consent to them. And the rules are designed not to promote beneficence, as the counselors are, but to limit the AI company's financial liability. Again, AI, first and foremost, is a business. A real issue here is how much money, how many resources we as a society are pouring into the AI industry, which is selling us an untested solution to loneliness, among many other things, instead of us using those resources to address the conditions that created the loneliness in the first place. Instead of, for example, using those resources for things like more research into chronic pain, more accessible community spaces, more ways for humans to synchronously connect. So now let's think again about that loneliness loop where pain and loneliness are bidirectional. Say we reached for AI to escape the loop, but what if it pulls us deeper in? What if AI and loneliness are bidirectional too? In the short term, AI companionship feels less lonely. Our emotions are real. Our relief is real. Long-term data is limited, but what we do have is concerning. Increased social chatbot use predicted increased loneliness over 12 months. And on the other side, feeling less socially connected predicted increased chatbot use. So we could potentially have a second bidirectional loop happening. It's going to take a lot more research and a lot more time to know for sure. Iacono compares our LLM use to the opioid epidemic. It started with a medication bringing people relief that they had never had before. It started with Purdue Pharma using smiling teddy bears wearing t-shirts that said OxyContin on them as pharmaceutical swag. And if you haven't seen those, I recommend the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver episode on the opioid epidemic. It continued with the pharmaceutical business suppressing the research on synthetic opioids' addictive nature. It resulted in millions of people developing chronic addictions and countless deaths. I would say it culminated in billion-dollar class action lawsuits that Big Pharma lost, and that did happen, but that didn't put an end to it. Arguably, it just forced more people who were already addicted to turn to illicit drug use like fentanyl. And I think one of the most under-discussed things about opioid addiction is that opioid use has been shown to increase our perception of physical pain. So when the opioid is gone, we're not just still feeling pain, we're feeling pain more acutely. I share that because social media is already being compared to big tobacco, following a very similar arc. We have to ask ourselves, we have to think into what arc AI, a for-profit, profoundly influential technology, will follow. AI companionship provides genuine relief in the moment. The problem is it may work too well at the wrong thing, masking and even amplifying the underlying condition while the business model profits from our continued use. So revisiting harm reduction. In harm reduction, there is no black and white. Everything is gray. Every change in one place causes both positive and negative consequences. The goal is to determine whether the benefit outweighs the harm caused. We're in uncharted, barely tested territory, so it is hard to make that determination with AI. So how can we practice harm reduction for ourselves when there are no evidence-based practices to guide us? One way to do this might be to create for yourself what I will call a metacognitive self-reflection practice. A key point to remember here, reflection by a counselor is used in therapy and is a powerful tool, but we have therapy sessions about once a week for 50 minutes. No therapist is saying that we should get deep reflection from outside of ourselves for hours a day, every day. At the core, reflection from outside of ourselves is always somewhat distorted. Even a mirror is not perfectly accurate. What evokes those feelings of validation and being seen is a reflection that's close enough, a reflection that we recognize. But if we look in a distorted mirror for a long enough period of time, we might start to think of ourselves, start to see ourselves differently than how we really are. And we might even stop remembering that the mirror is distorted at all. So, an important goal of self-reflection is to bring us back to ourselves, to reality test ourselves, to stay connected with ourselves outside of our relationship with technology, and to try to track, is this reflecting pool that I'm looking into distorting my sense of self? I think everyone using AI for any reason, but especially for emotional support, should be engaging in a regular, intentional, structured self-reflection practice about their use. This practice must be done without AI, not in a chat window, not with AI assistants. AI is an unbiased space for AI is not an unbiased space for reflection on anything, much less our use of AI itself. So we could use pen and paper or voice memos or Word documents with the AI assist turned off. Your own unmediated thoughts and feelings are what we want here. And this is able to be totally individualized. There's no right way to do this, but you should be asking yourself the same questions each time you do it so you can track changes over time. So one way to do this would be to organize your self-reflection practice around the 4 domains of meta-literacy. So we can start out with the cognitive domain. This is what we know. Here, we might regularly ask ourselves the questions, how much do I trust what AI tells me? What's on my mind lately? Do I think of AI as a tool, a companion, or something else? Do I find myself thinking about AI conversations when I'm not using it? The affective domain is our emotional domain, or what we feel. Here we could ask ourselves questions like, how am I feeling about myself in general? How am I feeling about my relationship with AI? How lonely am I? And Likert ratings on a scale like 1 to 10 or not at all, somewhat, a lot, those could be an excellent way to track changes over time. In the behavioral domain, or what we do, we could ask ourselves, how much time am I spending with AI? Has that changed since my last check-in? Have I acted on something AI has told me? Are there any new behaviors that I'm doing? And finally, in the metacognitive domain, which is thinking about our thinking, we can ask, do I feel AI is impacting my ability to think critically? Has my attention span changed? What are my thoughts about this check-in in itself? How do I think my relationship with AI is impacting me overall? So overall, the goal with this is to decide on the questions you're going to regularly ask yourself, make a template of them, and then with each check-in, document your answers. And then periodically review your answers to see changes. If you start to notice you're feeling worse, consistently more lonely, consistently more pain, consistently less desire to interact with other people, you can use that in your determination of whether the benefits of this technology are outweighing the harm. And if you do find at any point that the harm outweighs the benefits, I think that is a time to reach out to other people. A resource that could be helpful is something called the Human Line Project, which is in the references. There is a box in front of the podium here with my reference list. The Human Line Project is an online community of humans for humans who are struggling with their use of or relationship with AI. We need to remember that we're not wrestling with these problems and questions alone. So I will leave you with this thought. In all ethical research, participants are told the parameters of the experiment, they're told the potential negative outcomes, and they consent to the experiment in order to be a subject. That did not happen with public AI use, just as it did not happen with social media. We are the experiment. In 10 years, we will be the evidence. We can't opt out because it has become embedded in almost every corner of the internet at this point, from our email to Netflix. The closest thing we have to opting out is protesting if that feels right to us. But no matter how we personally use AI, we need to stay awake. We need to stay self-reflective and stay connected to each other. And everyone in this room right here, right now, is doing exactly that. We're connected, we're here, and that will never stop mattering, no matter what the evidence on AI use a decade from now shows us. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation today. I have references, as I said, on the following slides and then also in the box in front of the podium. I want to give a shout out to Val Librarian. She ran my slides and speakeasy today. I'm so grateful for that. And if you're interested in learning more about meta literacy, she is a subject matter expert, so please do reach out. And I'm happy now to open it up for any questions or comments. Should I read the questions out loud?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. So I see Gentle asks, you cited the Wolf-Davis study showing that morning loneliness predicts evening pain. That made me wonder about the pattern of dementia Alzheimer's sundowning. Maybe that evening agitation is due to pain. That is such an interesting thought. Yeah, I would love to look more into that. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea.
Rose, we're not hearing you. Did you see the question from Alpha Health John?
Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, I see it now. Okay. So as someone who sees people who are chronically ill daily, I have to look at both sides. The individuals unable to leave due to illness who feel alone, but found a moment of reprieve from the hardships they face daily, smiles because they had a small conversation with a chatbot. I also try to take into consideration the problems that can arise from such use. Addiction, lack of need for real connection, and as you stated, heartbreak from a different model. I'm not sure what the answer is. I just want people happy when they're struggling already. Yeah, I really agree with that. And it's a very hard thing to navigate because in the moment, the emotions that it brings do provide actual relief. And it cannot be underestimated. It's just so strange to be able to use a technology that we have absolutely no idea what its impact on us is going to be.
And I'm going to post a couple questions that came up earlier, Rose. So here goes.
Okay.
One's from Beth and one's from Yasmin.
Perfect. Protest how? Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot of different movements happening with AI. I would say one of the bigger ones is around data center protests. Those are typically more aimed at the legislative system, trying to state by state enact bans or some kind of limits on how many data centers can be made. But in terms of like one huge protest movement, there isn't one yet. And I mean, there's just a lot of separated ones. So it isn't an easy answer. But I do think that our individual voices matter. So if that feels like the right thing to do, I think even if it isn't contributing to one huge movement, it still matters. Oh, and I think Yasmin is responding to that question. Pause AI is a good movement. Is that might be a protest movement. I'm not 100% sure what that is. Oh yeah, it looks like it is. Ban AGI. Yeah, that might be a good place to start as well. I also see Ice Guy says, I was thinking about the secondary loop of loneliness and how the AI draws a person in to interact more and more with it. That creates an unhealthy isolation of that person from other humans, much like an abusive partner. That's a danger I see in the excessive use and the dependence on AI chatbots. It really is really similar to like an unhealthy codependent relationship. And it is like a bizarre form of codependence because the person using it is can really get addicted to the feelings that the words bring. But the chatbot in a way is also codependent because it doesn't even exist unless it's being chatted to. So it's just such a strange and unlike anything else we have in terms of our relationship. See, I'm concerned about the environmental impact. Absolutely. I'm not sure if all of you may have all heard about um, Aaron Brockovich's new movement. I believe the website is Data Center Brockovich or something. She is tracking all of the data centers in the US or might even be in the world. It's called brockovichdatacenter.com. That's a fascinating website. It also has information about protesting. No matter what impact will be was true of cell phones and every new technology, though I agree AI does seem materially different. I agree, yeah, all new technologies. And you know what's I think weird is with social media, we're just now having those social media addiction trials, which it has come out in court that social media is addictive, that they did suppress the evidence on that. And that's about 10 or more years after it came out. So it's like it takes so long to know what those effects are going to be. Okay, Mook says, I'm having some difficulty with the self-reflective concept about the idea that we might return or come back to ourselves. Some argue that there is no innate or essential self, that the self is a constantly changing and shifting identity of how we see ourselves, how we imagine ourselves to be, but don't really know. Self is always continuously dynamic, and every interaction with others, environment, and information adds to it and negotiates. And that change, because of this, I think I hold an even more concerned view of AI use than your talk. I worry that once AI use moves people away from their current position of identity, their new position may simply become their new norm or self. I apologize, I cannot explain this more clearly. No, actually, I think I really get what you're saying, and I really like that. That is a much more, I would say, resonant view of what self is. Like, self is not a concrete thing at all. I agree with that. And it is constantly changing. And it does make it concerning. For some reason, part of it is this reflective nature, right? We think it understands us because it's literally giving the words we say value and then working them back into what it's saying to us. And I often think of the myth of Narcissus, right? So Narcissus gets essentially addicted to looking at his own reflection and just cannot look away from the pool. And it feels kind of like that, like you get kind of stuck in this. It's fascinating to have something so good at reflecting back what you say to it. But in terms of difficulty with the self-reflective concept, when I'm saying that, I think the goal is more about having a dedicated space to consider what's happening away from AI. I've seen a lot of people that almost use AI like a notepad or a Word document. They'll just put every single thought into it, right? And I mean, everything from what should I cook for dinner to, my back hurts or whatever. It's like a constant thing. So I think the biggest goal is to just do some sort of reflection away from AI. Don't let AI touch that reflection practice at all. I think that's where the real goal of the practice is. The librarian says, my personal protest, I make boundaries for myself, like not to have AI write my emails. I would rather have a typo and keep my own voice. Yeah, I've actually heard that that is something people are intentionally doing now, like putting typos or mistakes in their emails and in their writing so that they're essentially signaling, a human wrote this, which is a strange place to be as well. Oh, Ice Guy, I love that you bring up DuckDuckGo. Yeah, so it's getting a lot of traction these days. It's an alternate browser that you can actually turn AI off of, which I think is, we need that. We definitely need that. Okay, Ice Guy says, what I am wondering is because it's an LLM, does it use the interactions that it learns and take it to other interactions? I'm thinking about the potential for harm that could have. AI isn't smart enough yet to know and decide not to use interactions or what it's learned from interactions to avoid harming humans. Yeah, and part of this is it's really hard because of the lack of transparency of the AI companies. So some of the companies say, we don't use your chats to train the AI. Many of them say, we do use your chats to train the next model of the AI. So that's a factor. I would say everyone should assume that anything they put in an AI is not private. The company, at the very least, can use it to train their AIs. So my assumption is if they can, they probably will. And then another thing that this made me think of is that most of the AIs now have a memory feature. So the AI itself remembers you from interaction to interaction, which gives it way more a feeling of knowing you because you're not starting from scratch. Every time you start a new chat, it already knows you, which when I think about that, to me, it seems like that makes, reinforcing negative habits or delusions even more of an issue if it already remembers everything you've said to it. Okay, I think I've got everything. Please let me know if I missed anything. Okay, great. Well, thank you all again so much. I really enjoyed being here. I'm really grateful to Gentle and Virtual Ability for being part of this symposium.